everybody. We are so thrilled to have you all here. And we know that because you are here, you care about elevating humanity. You care about improving our world. That is why you schlepped through the traffic. That is why you carved the time out of your schedule. That is why you figured out what clothing you still fit into. All of the hurdles that you had to do to get here, honestly, I don't want to understate, because I don't know about you, but I have not been going to events. This is really my first event, personally. Yes, a little applause there. That's very nice. And this is CCLA's first post-COVID event, if we can say post-COVID. So it's exciting for us. We are getting the gears going back up again, and thank you for being some of the early folks out here to bring the energy to this movement. So what is this movement? A lot of familiar faces here, so I won't go into super depth, but to those for whom this is new, the CCLA is the Los Angeles chapter of Conscious Capitalism, which is a global movement that focuses on elevating humanity through business. And it does this through how it calls out 4 tenets. The first one is higher purpose, that businesses should have a higher purpose that shouldn't only be for profit. The second is a stakeholder orientation, that it isn't only a stockholder orientation, it is a stakeholder orientation, very critical. The third is that this should be enacted through conscious leadership. And the fourth is that leadership should create a conscious culture. So those are what are called the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism. If you go on the website, you can learn a lot more about it, but I wanted to make sure that you at least know the basics of who this group is and what we believe will be able to help make a meaningful impact in the world. The name of this event is the Conscious Business Revolution, Thriving in the Next Normal. I wanted to use the word revolution. Simon has the word revolution connected with your new book. I feel like we are in an opportunity of a revolution. I feel that we have that capability. This is my segue to say, when you're running a revolution, you need a lot of supporters. And so I want to thank everybody who has given, contributed, and gotten us to this point, including, for example, Sweet Green, who gave us all those salads outside. Very, very generous of Sweet Green. So thank you for that. Cornell Winery, right there behind you. There's Tim and Lisa. So yeah, fantastic. Located right up in our very own Santa Monica Mountains. So that's really awesome. If you didn't get a chance for a glass of wine, definitely go by and talk to Tim. They have an amazing location up there that's also wonderful to visit. The community spirit, our vodka drink out in the back there. Thank you. Brand new. Yeah, where's Victor? I don't know, do we have Victor in here? Brand new company that has just launched that is all about connecting with the community. Super excited. We reached out to them and they said, how did you even hear about us? Like, we just literally launched like a month ago. We only have 1 product. But they came and they brought everything. And so thank you for that. Where is Terry? We have Natiera dried fruit snacks. Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much for that. Longtime CCLA supporter and advisory council member, Terry Olivier. Let's see, I don't want to leave anybody off. That would be terrible. Boxed Water also donated the boxed water for us in a sustainable way. And then this location is run by DOTS, co-working space. They have several different spaces. They have been extremely collaborative partners along the way, and so we really appreciate them. They're not here, but feel free to applaud for them as well. And then I want to have a huge thank you to the CCLA board. I didn't say my name, did I? I am Taya Kopp. I am the president of the CCLA board. Thank you. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of the CCLA board, most of whom are here tonight. And I just thought maybe you could raise your hand and we just give a round of applause to the CCLA board. Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah. And advisory council. Thank you. Thank you. And then a special shout out to Juliet Derbyshire, who is our chapter coordinator, who went way above and beyond. And here is Juliet. So thank you, Juliet. So with that, I mentioned the word revolution, and I think we have an opportunity coming out of COVID here. We've gone through some pivots, we've gone through some pauses, we've gone through some reflection. There's been a lot of change happening, and this is the moment when we can really seize the change that we want to make. I really firmly believe this. And in a minute, we're going to hear from Simon Mainwaring and others about how we can even step up our game from, I don't mean to minimize it, but just doing good to doing good at scale. How we have some real challenges that we are facing right now as a world. So how can we step up our game and really address those challenges? And so that was the theme as we were talking about coming out of COVID. How can we talk about this in a new way that is even more inspiring, that reflects the learnings that we had during COVID? So I think that's everything I wanted to say, other than it is my immense pleasure to introduce Simon Mainwaring, and I apologize if that is not the right way to say your name, but okay, it's good enough. Okay, who is a New York Times best-selling author. He is a longtime CCLA supporter, and he is also on our advisory council, and so very involved in helping to run this chapter. We're greatly appreciative of Simon, and Simon's going to give you a little preview of his forthcoming book, which also, by the way, there is a QR code sitting out on a low table over there. If you scan it, you can get 10% off a pre-order of his book and a signed book plate, which will be out there as well. So pay attention to that, which you can pick up after the program. So with that, I would like to introduce Simon, and please use this microphone.
Thank you so much, Taya. Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you, CCLA, to including me this evening and also putting an amazing event like this together. We all get to see each other again, right? And if I could, I would go and give each one of you a really awkward, socially dysfunctional hug, and then I would wash my hands twice, disinfect them out of love. So it's nice to see everybody here together. You know, I've had one issue on my mind for the last 3 or 4 years, which is we're not moving far enough and fast enough in business to address the issues, the challenges we face. Does anyone else share that concern? Could you raise your hand? Whether it's through the lens of, you know, carbon in the air, chemicals in the soil, plastics in the ocean, social inequities. And so I've spent the last 3 or 4 years writing and thinking about this, which leads to the new book. And it's really funny. This is one of the first copies that's available, the finished book in the country. And my publisher said, be very, very careful with it. So I'll be giving it away later this evening. But when I think about those challenges, one thing I'm very mindful of is they're not all just sitting out there in the future, very still, you know, in a vacuum waiting for us to arrive. They are compounding as we speak. Climate change, ocean acidification, loss of biodiversity, all of these issues are compounding and hurtling back towards us in the present. And what it's going to do is create this hockey stick of expectation on business, where the luxury, this self-ordained luxury that we currently have as to how far or how fast we change is going to be rudely ripped from our hands. Why? Because the timelines we're working against are contracting towards us. Just look at the headlines in the last 36 hours. Did anyone see the Dirty Dozen in The Guardian, where they called out 12 CEOs, including Richard Edelman of, you know, Edelman PR and Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, as people that they believed were complicit in the crisis, the climate emergency? Did anyone see the article about McKinsey, where 1,400 employees of McKinsey, one of the largest consulting firms in the world, wrote an open letter to their leadership saying, can we divest ourselves of clients in the oil and gas sector? Did anybody see the fact that Deloitte is now teaching its 330,000 employees around the world about the climate crisis so they can better serve their clients? Did anyone see today that Patagonia announced that they're boycotting Facebook and they asked other companies to join them? It is on. So this is not a projection. This is not the wishful thinking of wide-eyed, gloriously naive people like ourselves. These issues are becoming so real and present in our lives, in addition to COVID and all its challenges, that this hockey stick is coming. And in my opinion, through the line of sight of, you know, that we get through our work at WeFirst with all these different brands, is that we've got about 2 or 3 years left before this dialogue goes from being positive to punitive. with those companies that are complicit. Not just because we all woke up and grew a conscience, but because it's so real and present in our daily lives, whether it's Greece being on fire when people wanted to go on holidays in Europe. Is it Australia and Sydney, the fires there? Is it California fires? It's not Christmas season, it's fire season again, right? You know, all of these issues, floods in Germany and Western Europe. It's almost like Mother Nature is now the advertising agency for the world to wake up. Every headline, every time you look at your phone, there's another reason to go, oh my God, do I want to go on? And, you know, the reason I care so much is my two daughters are sitting in the back right there, my 19 and 22-year-old daughter, and I feel responsible. Raise your hands, Aisha and Talia. There you go. Hi, girls. If I'm not concerned about my own life, I sure as hell am concerned about their life and what they're going to inherit. That is the worst nightmare for any dad to do to any kid. Dad's mission accomplished, right? Right? Had to do it. Anyway, with all of that in mind, I've spent the last 2 or 3 years, in addition with, you know, my team at WeFirst, and we've got a couple of key members here, Logan and Karina. Where are you? Raise your hands. There they are. Everything that I'm sharing tonight is a result of all the team's work. And the output is this book. And yes, it is available now. And if you want to know more about it, you can go to leadwithwe.com or it's up on Amazon. And with that in mind, it really turns on the idea of collectivized purpose, which is how do we work, live, and grow together in new ways that will restore and protect the social and living systems on which all of our futures depend. Why? Because the whole is breaking down. The natural ecosystems, the nature on which all our lives depend is breaking down before our eyes. And as a function of that, the social systems are breaking down, disparity of wealth, social inequities, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so on. You just can't avoid it. Anyone who doesn't see it is just not paying attention or is gloriously checked out of the news and social media and their phones, and hats off to you. So what do we do? Well, the book turns on the concept of lead with we, and let me explain what that means. Central to its thesis is what I call the virtuous spiral of collectivized purpose. And let me explain both those terms. Virtuous spiral. Well, wait a second. Isn't that the virtuous cycle that all of us in this room have heard about? You do well by doing good, right? You've heard that from every brand, the Unilevers, the Patagonias of the world for so long. My problem with that, as you know, somebody who's been part of a team at a company like WeFirst for 10 years, we've done nothing else but work with small, mid-sized, large, purposeful companies in all stages of their purpose journey. And what I've noticed is that we almost self-limit our impact. We work almost exclusively with those stakeholders closest into our company, our suppliers, our employees, our customers, our nonprofit partners. But what happens is you end up with this tapestry of business where the vast majority of people are going about what they've done in the past, making money, often at the expense of each other or the planet. And then you've got these isolated pockets within it of companies being purposeful and doing good. That is not going to get us there. It's simply not. So we've got to expand that. We've got to have this idea of a virtuous spiral where we ladder up all layers in society. We ladder up all elements in our lives to compound and unlock the synergies so that we can actually accelerate and scale our response to the crises we face. So it's not a virtuous cycle, it's a virtuous spiral. Secondly, collectivized purpose. What does that mean? As I mentioned, there's a lot of great companies out there being purposeful. We all know them. There's the usual suspects, but more so than ever these days. And what's happening is that they are still the exception to the rule. And what we need to do is recognize we need a whole new narrative for business more broadly. Business itself needs a new purpose. Otherwise, one of three scenarios are going to happen. We're going to keep doing what we're doing right now. And if you looked at the news in the last couple of days, the UN climate report just came out and said, based on the commitments by countries and companies for greenhouse gas emissions and so on, we are on track to increase the global temperature by 2.7 degrees. 2.7 degrees. And you've all heard probably in the press, if we can do 1 and 1.5 degrees, we'll be okay. If we do 2 degrees, we're in trouble. If we do 3 degrees, it's very, very sobering. And the language they use, not my words, is that we're on track with 2.7 degrees Celsius globally, and it's going to be catastrophic for humanity. I wonder what words do we use to get through to people right now? I mean, there's been so much sort of alarmist communication around these areas. What does it take to actually help us to wake up? What more do we need? Look at the global pandemic. What more do we need to actually think about that we need to show up differently? And so business needs to have a collectivized purpose, which is to regenerate, restore, and really sustain the whole so the parts can thrive, the social and natural systems on which, all of our businesses depend. Why? Because brands can't survive in societies that fail. If there's no middle class to buy your products, if there's no infrastructure, the social systems are breaking down and so on, which we see so much evidence of. So with all of that in mind, just imagine in your mind's eye an arrow going upwards from me at the bottom of the arrow to we at the top, shifting your focus from a me first mentality to a we first mentality. And then around that is this virtuous spiral, which gets wider and wider to the top. And each one of these has a respective layer in which we can all participate to accelerate and scale our response. And I want to touch on each one of those layers because it's an expansive view of how we need to show up at CCLA, in your purposeful business, in business more broadly and globally. And so the first layer is me. I need to show up differently. Simon, standing here in front of you. My problem with the whole stakeholder capitalism argument is this. It's really powerful that we talked about this shift from shareholder to stakeholder capitalism. But by and large, that language talks about doing things differently so that all stakeholders in our future, including the environment, benefit from capitalism, benefit from the spoils of business. But where I struggle is, what about us all sharing in the responsibilities of making that happen? Why? We're in this mess together. Your actions, my wife's actions, my daughter's actions, everybody's actions, consciously or not, have aggregated to lead to the situation where there's too much carbon in the air, too much plastic in the ocean, too many chemicals in the soil, too much waste, and so on and so on. In and of themselves, each one of our individual actions aren't really that consequential, but the aggregate of them, like here's one fact. We're talking to a coffee company, one of the bigger ones, There are 60 billion K-cups, those little things? Each year, 60 billion distributed each year. 56 billion end up in landfills. 56 billion K-cups, and that's just one of a million household items. By 2050, The Guardian reports that there will be more plastic in the ocean by weight than fish. And the oceans are largely referred to as the lungs of the planet. Meanwhile, the UN refers to loss of biodiversity, where you lose enough species that there's a cascading effect because they're all connected. It's called the silent killer, because by the time it arrives, it'll be too late, because the inherent integrity of the whole natural ecosystem breaks down at a certain point. So with all of that in mind, I like to think we need to do things differently. So the first layer is me as an individual. What does that look like? It's very simple. What do I buy? I've got to buy from companies that don't just do less bad, they do more good. I've got to buy from companies that are really interrogating their supply chain, their company culture, and also what products they take to market and how they take them to market. What car do you drive? What bank do you bank with? Because where are they putting those funds? What are they enabling? What companies are they enabling behind the scenes? Where do you put money for your retirement fund? Instead of us being hopeless or even hapless in the circumstance, we've got to realize that every decision we make on a daily basis is an opportunity to unlock our own agency to make a difference. Will I buy that product or will I not? Will I work for this company or will I not? Will I invest and put my money here or will I not? Because we're doing it anyway, right? You're all doing it. And they all have consequences. But the consequences of the choices we're consciously or unconsciously making right now has led us to this mess. So instead of us kind of going from apathy, and I'm generalizing here, 5-10 years ago, where we're going to kick the can down the road and things will get better, straight to hopelessness. Oh no, it's too big. We can't do anything about it now. Let's try that bit in the middle. We went, oh no, I don't care. Oh, there's nothing we can do about it. We're royally screwed if that's the case. So we've got to unlock our own agency. And just a couple of other facts about this. The IPCC report, the sixth assessment, which came out about 6 weeks ago, that was headlines all around the world, said it's code red for humanity. That's a reason to do it. Existential crisis. That's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. The other report was the Lancet Planetary Health Report, which said 56% of young people around the world think humanity is doomed. Who's got kids? Can you raise your hand? Who's got kids? Who wants to have kids? And my daughters are critical. Are you like, maybe not into this world, maybe not sure? we could not have higher stakes to show up on an individual basis. And it just makes darn dumb, simple logic that we got into this mess together. We've all got to show up differently. The next level up the spiral is leaders. Now, that could be a CEO of a multinational corporation, or it could be the founder of a startup. In all cases, it could also be someone in HR, someone in product development, R&D, someone in the supply chain. In our experience over 10 years, the most impactful movements led by companies start by somebody, a champion inside the company that builds consensus, brings it to the leadership's attention, and then it takes on a life of its own. So I mean leadership in the broader sense. And we need to show up differently in that leadership capacity. And just two examples of that, because I want to make this stuff real. Walmart, one of the largest companies in the world, declared its ambition to be the first regenerative company. And they're re-engineering their entire supply chain with Project Gigaton to reduce their carbon footprint, absorbing all the capital and time costs and so on. And I was at Sustainable Brands last week, and Nestle announced that they are shifting now to Generation Regeneration, the largest food company in the world that touches billions of lives every day. Your cupboards, everything that you eat, is now shifting what they're doing as well. These are not only very, very, very powerful leadership declarations, they are very loud signals to the marketplace that things are changing. And just think of other indications out there: clean beauty, clean food, clean apparel, sustainable apparel. Look at Elon Musk. 10 years ago, when I first started writing We First, my first book, the whole auto industry was trying to crush him. This whole idea of electric vehicles. Do you remember that? Does that seem so long ago that no one can remember that? But it was like, it's never going to happen. He's crazy. He's got a funny accent. He's overseas, South African. What's going on in that head of his? Here we are. He's now the world's richest man, $300 billion. They say he's going to be the first trillionaire. And he is also, every auto brand in the entire auto industry is now committed to 2030, 2040, 2050 to alternative energy vehicles. It's happening all around us. Leadership is showing up differently. The next layer above that is culture inside your company. I was talking to Rick Ridgway, who's the VP of Environmental Initiatives at Patagonia not long ago. And I said to him, everybody loves you guys. Where's the biggest advantage for any company right now? Where can you win in terms of being the most purposeful brand? And he said, it's inside with your people, inside with your culture, how you treat them. And just think of some of the examples. I mean, you've got to define your purpose as a company, integrate it inside the organization, and then co-create your impact. So as I mentioned, Deloitte is training its 330,000 employees about the climate crisis so they can better serve their clients. Starbucks was offering catastrophe pay, and free therapy to its employees during COVID-19. There's time and again, we're seeing all of these examples of people showing up differently for their employees. Then above that, when you go above the culture piece, and it's all a build, these are not independent, discrete levels, it's all a build. You then go to the community level, which is, a lot of people think of it as marketing. And I was an ad guy for a long time and a lawyer before that, so I am everything you hate in other people. But with that in mind, I don't call it marketing, I call it community architecture. You are architecting a community that will build your business and its impact with you. A couple of examples. From Europe, IKEA. You know how we've all built IKEA furniture and we think we're really great, and then there's one screw missing somewhere and you're looking on the chart and you're like, I hate that so much. IKEA has just allowed, in service of a whole circular economy, allowed all of us to take the products we no longer want back, and they will buy them back from you to close the loop on the circular economy as of the last few weeks. Plus, IKEA in Europe is selling renewable energy to its customers in partnership with energy providers, solar providers. Why? Because they want to empower their customers to become climate positive households. When did an affordable furniture maker start selling energy to you? I mean, this is how you architect a community whereby you stop being a brand that sells products and you become a platform through which you and me, customers, feel like our partnership is going to enable the future we want for everybody. And that's just one example of so many different shifts out there. So there's you at an individual level, there's leaders, there's culture, there is the community, and above that you have society, which is you need to, above and beyond the movements you leave it as brands, you've got to drive cultural conversations that are going to shape society. And just think of 5 years ago, I think we've almost been desensitized to it, especially during COVID now. But 10 years ago, if you asked a brand to talk about gun control or women's empowerment or clean water, they're like, I'm not going to wade into that. I'm just going to move some product. My responsibility ends at the edges of my business, right? But now it's everywhere. Voting rights in Georgia, right? Electoral, access to the ability to vote right now. Roe versus Wade. A coalition of over 200 CEOs came together to lobby the Biden administration to have more aggressive climate goals. There is no way of staying on the sidelines anymore. These issues are, of necessity, politicized because they are so acute in terms of their effect in our lives. And so, a couple of examples, dramatic ones. P&G, one of the largest CPG, consumer packaged goods companies in the world, waded into arguably the most potentially volatile debate out there with their whole campaign called The Look, which is all about racial bias and the need for diversity and so on. And they took it head on in terms of how people not of color or people who don't come from multicultural communities look at people who do. And they took it head on with all the potential exposure that could have created. And I was actually moderating a panel with Virginie Helias, who is the Global Sustainability Director for P&G last week. And I said, what was that like inside? What is that conversation like? And she said, it was really scary. But we had to do it. We have to show up in a meaningful way because it's so real and present in our customers' lives, and we need to be relevant and authentic. Or another example, Tony's Chocolate. Does anyone know Tony's Chocolate? They're in England, but Tony's Chocolate? They have a cocoa supply chain that's slavery-free because the cocoa and so many others, palm oil harvesting and so on, there's a lot of issues in the supply chain, child labor and so on. So what they did, and just think about the legal departments right here, they went and copied Lindt and Nestle and Ferrero Rocher and made identical versions of their competitors' chocolate out of their cocoa, put them in stores like Sainsbury in London and said, if we can do it, why can't you? They, what's the technical term? Pissed off the entire industry so royally, and the lawyers swooped in almost like, what do they call them in Harry Potter when those black people come down? The mentors came swooping in. And they were out of those stores so quickly, but not until the dialogue was driven all over Europe. They got so much goodwill from the earned media, from the dialogue they drove. And it put the entire industry on notice to level up what they were doing. Consumers can't unsee that, particularly when it's done in a dramatic way. So here we are at the societal level, and you've got one of the arguably or most justifiably conservative companies in the world, P&G, taking on race. You've got Tony's Chocolate, make it like from an IP point of view, intellectual property, trademark point of view, copying your competitors' products and calling them out and putting the identical products in stores. What are you waiting for? What are we all waiting for? And then above and beyond that is the transcendent level of business, moving up this spiral from me to we. And at that transcendent level of business, we really are talking about restoring that symbiotic relationship between humanity and the natural world. And there are so many examples of this now. I was lucky enough to be on the Cannes jury this year for the Sustainable Development Goals. And we looked at all the entries from 2020 and 2021, and we gave the Grand Prix to the 2030 calculator, which is this incredibly simple, very kind of user-friendly interface that allows any business anywhere to calculate the carbon footprint of the products they make so they can communicate it clearly to consumers. Why? Because we never had any clear line of sight on the impact of what we're doing and what we're buying. So we need to equip people with information because that information is power. Also, we see companies like Bolt Threads or Modern Meadows that are biofabricating leather alternatives for the fashion industry, for car seats and the auto industry. They are decoding the DNA of spider webs and making eco-silk, and they're doing partnerships with Stella McCartney to make 100% biodegradable tennis dresses. Like, every one of these challenges is not a burden. It's actually a marketplace opportunity in disguise for those who want to lean into it. Again, look at Tesla, look at clean beauty, look at clean food, look at these industries that are revolutionizing themselves, self-disrupting right now. With all of that in mind, as you flow up this spiral, the benefits flow back down to everybody. And until we widen the aperture of our ambition as purposeful companies, as conscious capitalists, to actually create wider connective tissue between all of our efforts, we're not going to unlock the synergies between us. We're not going to be able to compete with business as usual, and we're not going to meet these challenges we face in sufficient time and at sufficient scale. But I do want to assure you of one thing. The world has woken up, and there's something happening right now which I've never seen before. We have the stakes, an existential crisis. Are we paying attention? We have the stakeholders. We have leaders, employees, suppliers, consumers, customers, but we also have investors. All the debate around ESG funds and environmental, social, and governance metrics. Everyone, for the first time, we have all the parts of the engine of capitalism so we can offer a viable alternative to the business as usual. Up till now, we haven't had all the parts, but now we do, and the market forces are there. And so Lead with We is really about asking yourself, as a simple decision-making filter, how can I lead? How can I do it with other people as broadly as possible, as many stakeholders as possible? And then how can we benefit the largest we, and the planet? And so it's a very simple tool you can use. Wherever you are in a company of any size, just ask yourself, when I'm making this decision, how can I lead with we? And I'll leave you with one thought, which is no one is better positioned to lead this revolution than everyone in this room. We are way ahead of the pack. And as soon as we start doing it, as soon as we start working with nature and serving the natural world instead of stealing from it, the natural world will absolutely dazzle us with its inherent and innate regenerative and abundant capacity. And we are going to fall in love with the natural world all over again. It's going to be a second honeymoon. And what we're seeing right now is not the end of something, but rather a truly miraculous rebirth of business. And as a rebirth, it is appropriately painful. But we will get to the other side. And there is nothing we can't achieve if we do it together. So I invite you to look at Lead with We, the book. Check out leadwithwe.com. And I deeply, deeply believe this is our moment, this is our time, and there's nothing we can't achieve if we do it together. So thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you, Simon. Wow. Well, I'm definitely motivated. Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Ortiz. I am very proud to serve on the board of CCLA. And this is the first IRL event that I've been to for CCLA, so it's very exciting. And I have the honor of introducing our moderator for tonight's discussion. I once heard a piece of advice about networking, and the person said, when you go to build relationships, make sure other people are wearing your t-shirt. So like if you go to a concert, the performers, they don't wear the t-shirt that says Led Zeppelin or whatever, right? It's all the fans. So I will tell you, I wear a Jordan Howard t-shirt. To give you a little bit of a backstory, and can I share this? Okay. So I met Jordan when she was a high school student at Environmental Charter High School. And it's more than a minute now. It's been a little bit, more than a decade. But she was someone who just made such a lasting impression on me. I was wowed by her. And, you meet those people in your life that you're like, I can't wait to see what this young person does. And so flash forward, we're working on this event, and we wanted like a fresh, energetic voice to bring perspective to this important conversation. And I said, you know what? I haven't been in touch with this person in a long time, but I know who would be perfect. So thankfully, LinkedIn exists. We found Jordan. She is the president of her own business called Shift Space, cultural architects working on influence and impact with media, entertainment, and other companies. She's spoken to over 30,000 people in over 8 countries. She even opened for then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, which means I am opening for the person who opened for Secretary Clinton. So help me welcome Jordan Howard.
Thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. So that's the thing. All of those times that I've been introduced, it hasn't ever been like that. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was incredible. I needed that. I needed all of that. And just when we talk about time and space, and I was at Environmental Charter High School about 12 years ago. So the story that she was saying when we met, that was about 12 years ago. But what is time and space? Because you ended in talking about a rebirth. And one of my last meetings when I was 1 year at an ad agency, only calling ad guys. So being the person at top, Ad guy. Every time I would just, what is this place? What am I doing here? Why am I here? What am I here for? I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I'm 28. Who are these people? What is this place? But it was Shell. My last meeting before I had surgery. In my womb. So you talk about a rebirth, and you talk about, but even that other piece of manifestation, because September 2019, when I started to build Shift Space, I said, I need an ad guy. I need an ad guy to say all of the things that need to be said. I need an ad guy who knows. But like, do these guys exist? Because the only thing I know about ad guys is Mad Men. That was my only recollection when I was in those rooms. So but it's that other piece of coming to places like this where we see that there are more of us in those places and spaces, and it is that interconnectivity that is that power. But it is also up to us and our role as humans to keep building those relationships and tapping back. And when we remember going back to those memories, because you don't know, the person might be doing the thing for your time and space to bring you together. So it's incredible for that. And I want to share something, because along with that time and space, before I introduce the panelists, because it's one of the things that I've always done, and it's always been my role to do, is share stories of people as a storyteller. But I don't share my story all the time. You kind of just got to go to the internet and learn about that, or read a bio and all of that. But it's my role to share the other stories of the people who aren't here. And this morning, one of the most inspiring, it was another piece that I needed to hear. This woman, Vanessa, during that same time, September 2019, this woman, Natasha, her name, Vanessa is her name. She's from Uganda. And I was on the internet, like I'm always on the internet, because you have to, in order to be a millennial whisperer, you have to spend a lot of time on the internet and consuming content and understanding what all the different places and spaces are doing. And it was another Copenhagen that was happening. So it was another like UN General Assembly week. It was September, so it was UN General Assembly week. And there were about 7 young people. Most of them were under the age of 21, all from different countries, and protesting outside of COPE like they usually do. And I'm like, okay, who are the youth activists? So I always look at who are the youth activists as someone who is a youth activist. And then I go to the boardrooms, but it's my role to stay connected to them and bring them and just build community with them. And Vanessa was hurt because she was cropped out of the image by AP. Associated Press. She was cropped out of the image while she was protesting outside. And she was the only representative from the continent of Africa. So in the story that then continued to carry was Greta's story, not the other, like, there was the fact that it was like 8 kids from lots of different places and spaces with lots of different complex issues for the planet, but it was Greta. And it was that where my imagination, as I've only had a career of saying, hey, give the young people mics, so give the young people checks, put the young people in the room, listen to them, put them in charge. Y'all don't have the answers because you ruined the planet and they want to fix it. Put them in the place. And in this moment, having this very weird black and white moment in my room where I'm like, Greta. But I can't go against Greta because then Vanessa's story is supposed to be elevated, and they're choosing to not elevate that and to choose to not talk about the continent of Africa when we're talking about climate change, when climate change is only affecting them right now and always since we've been studying it. And it was hurt. It was a different kind of hurt, but it was that same hurt that I was feeling when you can imagine that 15-year-old went into those ad guy rooms. But it was that other piece of, okay, no, this is a tool. Pick it up. You know what to do. You just left the media world where you were asking, who are the ad guys? What is the power of media? What does scale look like and ecosystems look like in these different places? And how complex is it? How do we solve these different problems with people and systems at the same time? I want to read, Vanessa is on the cover of Time. You will be able to see her. You'll be able to get the Time issue over the next 2 weeks. She's on the cover of Time magazine. The Activist, it reads, Uganda's Vanessa Nakati dreams of a Green Deal for everyone. I just want to read the end of what she said. Or want to read what she said. The Congo Basin rainforest ecosystem, sometimes called the world's second lung, is like the Amazon, rich in biodiversity. It's also vital as a global carbon sink, sequestering 600 million metric tons more carbon per year than it emits. The same amount, says the World Economic Forum, as 1/3 of the CO2 emissions from all US transportation. The forest, which stretches into parts of 6 countries, is home to as many as 150 ethnic groups, including indigenous peoples such as Batwa, Bambatu, Bakaka. Humans have lived in the forest for more than 50,000 years, and 70 million people today depend on it to survive. The ecosystem contains 10,000 species of tropical plants, many of which may provide medicinal benefits, as well as 1,000 species of birds, 700 species of fish, and 400 species of mammals, including the black colobus monkey, which is vulnerable to extinction. Scientists have calculated that unless something shifts dramatically, all of the Congo's forests, all of the Congo's forests may be gone by 2100. That's soon. It is 2021. The more I discovered what was happening to the Congo Basin, the more upset and angry I became. She's 24. Vanessa is 24. The more I discovered what was happening to the Congo Basin, the more upset and angry I became. Why wasn't I aware of this? Well, one reason is that the world's financial resources, including the media, are concentrated in the global north. The stories that are shown on television, published in print and online, and shared on social media are overwhelmingly ones that are already familiar to the developed world. The destruction of the Congo rainforest is only one of the many interconnected disasters that climate change is exacerbating in Africa. In January 2018, time and space, Cape Town in South Africa came within 90 days of running out of water. 90 days, 3 months. In March and April 2019, cyclones Idai and Kenneth struck the coast of Mozambique in the southeast of Africa, resulting in 2.2 million people needing urgent aid because of flooding. This in a country where 815,000 people were already in dire straits because of the drought. That August, flooding in Niger affected more than 200,000 people. In November, in the Horn of Africa, Djibouti reported 2 years worth of rainfall in a single day. 2 years of rainfall in a day. Like, there are humans living under these skies. And my favorite thing to do is post the moon at night. My favorite thing to do is go out and post the moon at night and have that moment. And like, people are living under these skies. Young people realize what's at stake. Young people see the kind of future they are walking into. That's Vanessa from Uganda. They're telling her story now. That's who keeps me up and inspires me and has always lifted me since I was a young one. But it was that fire that you heard in her words that always lifted me up, where she's like, no, I didn't know about it. What y'all didn't tell me. But I had that same experience during COVID when I was home, was out of my ad guy view and all of that, because I decided to be an entrepreneur. So I'm back at home with the parents right before the pandemic hit. And I'm in South Central because that's where I grew up. But I'm in like the outskirts of South Central. So it's different. We don't see things in the same way. We don't hear things in the same way. And I'm going to the hospital because people are going to the hospital during COVID because we're all losing people. And I'm going to the hospital. And as I walk into Kaiser Permanente to take the forms for my aunt who was suffering from COVID, I see the oil refinery. Just like, whoa, that's that oil refinery that I talk about on panels. Whoa, I'm 12 miles away from home. And I start walking the dog on mornings. And it was so clear. When is it ever clear in Los Angeles? It was so clear on most of my mornings during 2020. I'm waking up to oil, walking the dog and looking at the oil mill. And I'm like, wow. So I've been in an environmental injustice, and I've been talking about environmental injustices in my whole life. Who's going to come and save us? Where are the people? I'm going to need a call, and now I'm here. But I've always believed I've always believed in the shifts because I've always believed in the people. It's always been the connectivity. It's all because I believe in the fire inside first. I believe in the fire inside first, and I believe that we can tap that fire on the inside of any being. So I'm excited to be able to invite the panel up to have this discussion because we have so many different ecosystems that are tackling these issues and leaders looking at it is my role to pick all of these uncomfortable, dark, and light pieces up and figure out what to do with my teams, what to do with myself, what to do with my family. I want to talk about that with all of us. Let's come on up. I'd love for everyone to introduce themselves, your name, your company, and like what inspires you. Right? We've been talking about all the dark, but there is so much light, and it is important to reflect that light. What inspires you, and what gets you, or you can tell us what keeps you grounded. Let's start with you, Brian.
Perfect. Brian Thompson. I work for a purpose-led clothing brand called Prana, based down in Carlsbad. And, you know, everything that Simon was saying earlier, being part of the outdoor industry where what we make is for people who are getting outside and enjoying the gift we have of nature, and whether that be a park in your neighborhood or the forest and mountains not too far away. It's a constant reminder of the delicate balance, right? So the work we do, yes, eat the mic. Ooh, thank you. The work we do on a daily basis is a reformation of how important it is to protect the spaces that we're recreating in. So I'm passionate about what we do because every day it's impacting the places we want to be. Is that good enough? You want me to keep going? That's good.
That's great.
Go down the line. All right, Tom Vozo. I'm the CEO of Homeboy Industries, and so at Homeboy we help former felons and gang members change their life around. And so what inspires me are the fellow folks we work with. You know, Homeboy it's a beautiful organization. It's a sanctuary. People come and change your life. Our folks never really had a chance in their life. They would jump to a gang at a young age. And here we are, as they come out of prison and jails and want to change their life, they come through our doors and we accept them. And we accept them for who they are. We don't judge them for the color of their skin, their tattoos on their face, or what crime they've done. And amazingly, if you treat people with love and respect and give them a first chance, they change their life around and really help out not just their life, but their children's lives. So there's a lot more to be told about Homeboy, but what I'm inspired is being with my fellow Homeboys.
Hi, I'm Laurel Angelica Myers. I'm one of the founders and co-CEO of Prima. We're a plant-based wellness brand whose number one enemy is stress. We firmly believe in the idea of the ripple effect. And if you feel better about yourself and if you are showing up better, there's more kindness, there is more patience, and you can do more good in the world. That's very much part of our philosophy and very connected to what we're talking about tonight. I think for me, the question of what to grounded are for me the same thing. It's my kids. It's very easy to feel jaded, to feel paralyzed by what's going on in the world. And when I see how they see the world, everything sparkles, everything shines, and it's so simple, and there's such possibility. And at the end of the day, what matters is your human connection and your relationships. And that for me makes me want to do what I'm doing. I want to make an impact and create a better world for them because it is their world, not ours.
All right, is this okay? It doesn't look or smell like a pretzel, so I don't know quite how to eat this. I'm Jen Schuler. I'm the CEO of Wetzel's Pretzels. You might be, Jen's here. Awesome. Lucy Lai and Brandy Taylor are here too with Wetzel's Pretzels. You might be surprised that we're here. We're kind of surprised too. But I think we're one of those companies that when Simon's looking for a wake-up call is one that's had one, and we're early in this process and finding our way through, but excited about what that means for us. And Lucy and Brandy are leading a lot of the work that we'll talk about today. What inspires me at Wetzel's Pretzels is a franchise system, which means it's owner operated. So we operate pretzel stores like the one at Downtown Disney that Anita took her grandson to. But in addition to that, there's entrepreneurs out there who believe in the dream and invest in a business and create generational wealth for their own families. And so in that case, for us, many of those people are immigrants to this country who take a chance and take their life savings and take a chance on a pretzel company that have then allowed them to really flourish here and send money back home and make a real impact in their community here. And I'll tell you one story about that. I know it's a little long, but it's a great story. So one of our franchisees, an immigrant from Bangladesh who now has about 10 stores, and he was really encouraging all of his employees in the stores to get vaccinated. The vaccination rate was low among his team. And one woman in particular, who was an immigrant to the country as well, was hesitant about it and unsure. And so he called her and he said, you know, I get it. I was kind of hesitant too. I don't really know what's in it, you know, but I trust that there's scientists out there who know more about this than I do. And at the end of the day, the reason I came to this country was for opportunity to live a healthier, safer, happier life. And I can tell you that in our home country, there are billionaires who can't get access to this vaccine today, but we came here and that is giving us the opportunity to get access to that now. And that turned her around. And so it just reminds me that like each one of these business owners that is part of our Wetzel system, not only are they creating generational wealth, but they're also creating a platform from which to help change lives every day in a positive way. And that a lot of that tone starts here at the corporate office and then it spreads a lot wider than we ever realize our impact. So that's what inspires me.
I'd love for Simon to take us through one of these uncomfortable shifts, but what's the process? How do we create these different collaborative, contextualized relationships that foster in the shifts? But also too, Jen, you said we shouldn't, you're probably surprised that we're here. We shouldn't be surprised that any of us are here. Like what is that journey look like?
Who here has a business? Who's either founded a business or an entrepreneur right now? But, you know, in our role at WeFirst, where we help companies like yours, you know, scale your impact and your growth, we only do it because we're in awe of all of you, because you are the levers that have the greatest potential to make a difference out there, because you make the products that people rely on, you reach into people's lives, you have the communication skills, you have the bricks and mortar networks and so on. So, you know, I just want to say that up front. It's that we exist to, you know, really better serve all of you. And that process looks like, in its most simplest terms, a very serious and sober audit, self-audit of where your company is right now. It's supply chain, how you're treating your employees, what you're making, how you're taking it to market, who you're working with, how accountable or transparent you are in terms of that impact. And no brand gets it all right. You know, we've been lucky enough to work with a lot of those brands that people go, oh, wow, they're out front in that purpose space. And every single one of them behind the scenes are like, oh my God, we got so much we got to fix. And we're a mess and we know what's going on. Just don't tell anyone, okay? True story. And once you've done that audit, then you do need to, if you haven't done so already, define your foundational purpose, which is not a communications or CSR exercise, but foundational to your entire business through the whole value chain, from your supply chain to employees to customers, consumers, and out into the world with your community work. And once you've defined that purpose, and we can speak about how you do that if we want to in another question, you then integrate it into your organization in a key way. Most people tell people about their purpose to their employees, and it comes across as a prescriptive thing, and they don't respond well. You're telling me what I should care about. You're telling me what we should stand for, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, you've got to do that. You've got to share it with them from a top-down perspective. Then you've got to actually find those stories of employees who bring that purpose to life, like you would with Homeboy and so on, and elevate those stories bottom up. And then you've got to create rituals and traditions over time to make sure it's sustained. So top down, bottom up, and over time. And then last thing I'll say is you've got to go out there with your customers and consumers and really co-create, co-author impact. I'll give you an example. Dove's purpose is to make beauty a source of confidence, not anxiety. One of their most recent campaigns is they reached out to real women and said, could you send in photographs of yourself unretouched? And we're going to create the world's largest free stock library of real women that any advertisers can use anywhere in the world because they want to combat the objectification and sexualization of women. That's not advertising. That is co-creating the cultural shift that delivers on the expectation of their purpose. And that's what I mean about co-creating impact with your employees, with customers.
Beautiful. So let's talk about how we decide. How do we decide? How do you jump in, and what is your role? So let's talk about nature, and then let's talk about criminal justice and the people behind what does justice look like. Well, let's talk about nature first, and what Prana's been really doing with reconnecting us back to nature.
Thank you, Jen.
How you even got to pick. It is the outdoors that we're going to regenerate. Even Simon said, like, it's about us connecting back to the outside.
Obviously, for any organization, there is so much to do. So it's about focus, right? We have to leave some things on the side for now to do big things. So getting our teams really focused on where we can have the greatest impact and where we can scale, even if it means neglecting certain things that need attention, that's the starting point. And we have this phrase we use quite often, and it's part of the ground up work we do within the teams to socialize ideas and goals and build them into the DNA of what we do. Because it's very easy, all of us, I'm guilty of it too. When we start talking about a challenge, you're initially going to go to why it can't be overcome. What are the things, the hurdles in the way, or the supply chain partners in the way? And we like to say, what needs to be true to turn that no into a yes? And that completely flips the dialogue, because bring up the challenge, what needs to be true for us to solve that challenge? And it gets us going. It creates a brainstorming flywheel that gets us to this point of thinking beyond challenges. And the challenges become things that it's kind of fun to overcome them. Like, no one else has figured this out. Why not us? How do we get this done? So I'd say that's the starting point. The other thing that's been really important, because you mentioned it, Simon, top-down goals can seem like edicts, and it's, even if they're great ideas, sometimes you're not going to get everyone on board. So we've taken almost like a civic governmental approach to things is, we still want to start top-down. We still want to do the deep research to understand the amount of work that an impact will require, but we're doing like public comment periods with our staff. We just did one yesterday about our chemical use, because dye stuffs and things like that are in your clothing, there's some nasty business there. And we had an open comment period where everyone in the company was invited to share their thoughts. What do you think about this goal, the timing of the goal, the ambition of the goal? And we use that feedback from the team to craft the final bill, so to speak, that then we shoot forward. And what that does is we often get some good input, but it socializes and everyone feels like it's their goal, not the leadership's goal, not the CEO's goal, but it's the company's goal. So I think those are a couple examples of how we do that.
I like that. The collaborative process is important in change making and ensuring that we're all a part of it in some way, especially for leaders. So I love that you all went on that journey. Tom.
All right. So part of your question was what makes the shift? Right?
Yes.
So let me tell you about a shift. So I had a shift. So prior to Homeboy, 26 years in corporate America, my last stint was being the CEO of a $1.8 billion business, 18,000 employees. I say those numbers for a reason. So now here I am I came in as a CEO of a $10 million human services agency that's mission is to help folks who've never worked before, right? And so what I've come to learn is, what does it take? So Homeboy does a phenomenal job of helping people change their life around, heal from the trauma they've had, but I also saw that it never worked. And so in a shorthand way, Homeboy helps people become from the unemployable to become employable. And what we do within our social enterprise businesses is provide that training ground, that work experience, so that they can work in a real business, get criticism from a supervisor, but in a very therapeutic and trauma-informed way. say that to say that everybody at Homeboys really focus on that mission. And it's amazing the workforce we have at Homeboy. And so I've always imagined in my mind, go back to my whole business network and all those guys and say, listen, if you have a business challenge, you pick your workforce, I'll pick my workforce, which is going to be the Homeboy workforce. And let's see who wins at the end of the day with the workforces. And our workforce is terrific. And so I've come to learn our folks want to work. They want to work hard. They never have been given the chance before. And so we as a whole organization are around helping someone heal from their trauma, but get ready to be mainstream back into society. And a job is the most important thing. So our last evolution of this is, how do we take the best of the for-profit world in terms of capital investment, and how do we grow more Homeboy type businesses to provide more jobs for the people that we have? Because I know our managers are as good as the managers in the for-profit world, but because we're a nonprofit, there's like a 40% haircut on their salaries, and that's just not right. So we want to create businesses that are quality jobs, high level of pay, good benefits, predictable hours, and something that they can actually economically thrive, as opposed to being victims of economic injustice, social injustice, and racial injustices all along the way. Before I give up the microphone, I want to, my friend Mark LaRanger's in the audience, CEO of Chrysalis. They do a phenomenal job helping people who are disenfranchised and troubled as well.
And then wellness. Like we all know exactly why what you do is important now. That's been a very interesting shift for wellness over the last 2 years, where we all as humans understand whether the femininity, masculinity, we all as humans understand the need. But what has changed in the last 2 years, and where are you moving towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID's a big one. I think that really brought mental health front and center, and it made it very tangible for a lot of people. I think the idea of mental health, it's felt very stigmatized up until now, and it felt like something that was other, and people who suffered from depression and these, clinical diseases, it was very easy to put that into a box and say, oh, that's not me, that's not my life. And I think going through a global pandemic and realizing, oh my God, the day-to-day stress that I live in, it's crippling. And what toll is this taking on my mind, my body, my relationships? What does wellness even mean? Like what is that? And I think, taking it from something that really felt like a luxury and something that's like, well, I'll get there if I can. I think something like COVID really brought us together to say, no, this is foundational, it's fundamental, and if I don't take care of these things, it will destroy me, and it will have a massive impact on the road and on all the people around me.
What were some of the things that you were seeing before the pandemic, though, that what was the place that you were in that all the other industries and us that weren't focused on wellness and focused on mental health and still in that stigmatized wall we're still able to live in that, because that's the piece where COVID was the crash. So I'm interested to know, because I played in healthcare right before I played with the ad guys. But it was that we were asking the question of and learning about millennials' relationship with wellness. How do you now, what does scale look like with wellness and healthcare? How do we marry wellness and healthcare?
That is an excellent question. Is this one working? All right, we'll try that again. I think that first we have to understand that caring for mental health is healthcare. I think that is step one, and I don't think that we have been there. Glad that resonates. But look, this was all happening before COVID hit. COVID accelerated it. And we talk about this a lot at our company, that all of these things were happening, all of it was bubbling, and we saw that the chronic stress was rising and people were looking for solutions. And there are some great opportunities out there. And, hemp CBD is one of our core ingredients, and that's really what we're backed around. People didn't have access to it. It's really transformational for health, but how do I get it safely? How do I get it effectively? How do I get it consistently? People were clearly looking to look at other modalities, meditation, mindfulness, breath work. All of this was on the rise. And then when COVID hit, it really accelerated. And I think kind of brought everyone to their knees and realizing, oh, I really have to deal with this and I need better solutions. And I hope that the dialogue is changing in people's perception around wellness and healthcare is that they are not two different things. They are the same thing. And that we have to take a preventative mindset in order to have healthcare. Because right now we live in a society where everything is fixing the problem after it's happened, as opposed to thinking about how I prevent that thing from happening in the first place. And that's where we need to go. And that's really what we're trying to give people tools for, is to help manage your body before it degrades, before you have all the negative impacts, so that we don't have a massive healthcare system that is paying billions of dollars of bills and procedures and preventable conditions and diseases.
I would love for us to break, because I'll leave it with you so you can think about it first, because you made me think about, right before we talk about Retro Pretzel and just scale, what does the relationship with companies and bodies and our bodies look like? How can I get healthcare and wellness from the company that I work for? What does that, hemp, CBD, how are you advocating for these different healing agents as a company for wellness, for your employees, for the workforce?
Well, first and foremost, 100% covered PPO healthcare for your entire team. I mean, that's something that we've done from day one, as well as access to the products that we make, right? I think at the end of the day, every action you take has to start with how you show up in your day and how you treat your people and how your people are going to treat each other. And it starts there, and then there's a ripple effect. And you have to live your mission internally, otherwise it's not authentic, and your team will know that, and your customers will know that, and you won't be able to do the work that you're trying to set out to do.
And this is why, Jen, I'm so excited for you to be on this panel. Like, seriously, and it's funny because it may be in like May or June. My sister is obsessed with Retzel Pretzel. She's 13 years old. She's 13 years old. So one of our things during the pandemic, she just, Jordan, I'm ready to go to Retzel Pretzel. And I'm like, what? No, I got my money. I'm ready to go to Retzel Pretzel. Where are you getting money from? You don't leave the house. She was making money during the pandemic, but she was going to Retzel Pretzel. But while we were going on one of those days, she's like, well, no, I want to own a Retzel Pretzel one day. Actually, I had a dream about it. Nicki Minaj and Cardi B were there as well, eating pretzels. But it was her who called me a few hours ago and was like, okay, I got it. Safe space. I asked you that question because my sister, who wants to be an owner, who wants to be a CEO, she's thinking about safe spaces. I'm like, that's not the question, but it was. But also scale. When we think about the footprint that franchises like yours have, that's what has always excited the kid in me who knew that it was business if I wanted to change the world, not the nonprofit world. So I want you to talk about the journey that you've been going through over the pandemic with really looking at what type of people first shifts can we make on the inside of our employees, because you're in our neighborhoods.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, Simon, when you came up with that long list, I was about to look at Lucy and Brandy and be like, we got to go. We got so much work to do. I don't think I can even talk. So I'll tell you, so for us, if I think about like the history of the business, we're a 27-year-old business and founded in Pasadena, California. And I feel like, we started with pretzels. Like, let's do really good, delicious pretzels that everyone loves. And then we're like, hey, look, that generates profits, for us and a potential franchise owner. And that's a way to scale. And then through the COVID experience, I think that like the next phase for us was really around people, like this really, really looking inward on the people side. And for me, it was critical that for those of us that are on the team working through COVID, that work became a bright spot in the day. And that was something that you looked forward to, that was actually like your break in the day, because that's when you were connecting with your peers, when you were working to save a business. I mean, there was a point where we thought with the cash in the bank, this business was done. We were just trying to save the business, right? And that it was a place where you were empowered, you had autonomy, you had creativity, and that you could work on a place where there was an intersection between your own personal growth goals and the business objectives, and you could find meaning and joy in your work. And so we really spent a lot of time focused in around that over the last year. And what was phenomenal is when you spent time like, you know what, let's follow people's passions. And if it has like a business objective tied to it, good, that's good too. And when we did that, the results kind of spoke from themselves. So we went from, thinking the business might shutter its doors in 2020 to being up 30% over 2019 and basically recovering fully from COVID. And so much of that was just putting faith and trust in your team. And again, focusing in on the personal side of it, like, where's your passion? What can you bring? What are your ideas? What have you always wanted to do? We're small enough that you should be able to do that here and make that impact here. So I think that's the people side. And that's been so fulfilling for us that now we're like, okay, so what's the purpose side? Wait, we have a purpose other than profit and pretzels? Like, oh, this is interesting. I think that got awakened for us in the summer during the Black Lives Matter movement. And we were taking a look at, like, we were so inspired. I was like watching Target pledge like $10 million. And I'm looking at our bank account and I'm like, oh, like that's not in the cards. But what we felt like we could do was a sustained commitment from passionate people over time and use whatever platform we had to make change. And so we were looking at it like, okay, what can we do? We can feature, like, we can better feature people of color in our advertising, check the box. Yeah, we can do that. And then when we really sat and looked at it and we said, okay, let's take a look at our crews, our store crews and our general managers. How many of those are people of color? How many of our best general managers are Hispanic women? A lot. Okay, now let's go quick look at our owner base. Where are the Hispanic women? Well, there's one. We have 100 owners. There's one Hispanic woman. Where are the Black owners? Oh, none. How about the women? A handful, usually with their husbands. That does not reflect the crews that are running these stores every day. That does not reflect the customers who are buying these products, and that's a problem. And so what we looked at is said, okay, we can make an impact. We saw what this did for owners who came here as immigrants to this country with very little and have become multimillionaires, right? And created generational wealth for their family here and their families back home. We felt like we could do that here and that we could make our ownership base better reflect our crews. And so what we set out to do is like, okay, well, how do you make that happen? I mean, the research is really distressing when you look at, a woman of color who has the same credit as a white male, same credit score, same amount of capital. She will go in, it'll take longer for her to get the loan. She'll get a higher interest rate. She'll get worse terms and less money. Like, just look at the facts, and it's that much harder for her. So our team with Lucy and Brandy really leading this effort was like, what do we need to do to make that person successful? First, we're going to have to find a way to get her capital. Second, we're going to have to find a way to get her content. Like, she's a first-time business owner. She was a general manager at a Wetzel's for 20 years. She never dreamed she could be an owner. So we need to educate her. We need to work with partnerships like Start Small, Think Big, organizations like that are going to help her understand what a P&L statement is. Like, what are the HR policies I need to understand? Because it's one thing to give someone like the bootstraps, but it's another thing to throw them into that without any knowledge to be successful. So that's sort of the content. And then the last thing was the community. We need to figure out how we can bring our community together, that they can have a mentor franchisee that can mentor them along the way, so that once they get past their grand opening, they have support in the next 2 years with the challenges that come. And then the last thing, I think, on the capital piece, we're still actively seeking the right bank partners who we think are going to be invested in these types of owners. We're going to be looking at how we can discount everything about opening a store for them so that capital need is less. So we're looking at things like, hey, Pepsi, you guys have an initiative internally, right, around this. You need to give them like free soda for the first year. Hey, dough manufacturer, all of their orders for the first year free. Like, if everybody puts a little bit into this together, if we can inspire all our partners in the stakeholder, we're going to be able to make ownership possible for people maybe like your sister who dreamed of it but never really figured out the way in. So that's what we're working towards, and that's the purpose.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's talk about the new fund. Let's talk about the new fund that Homeboy has.
You want to buy a Wetzel's?
Actually, I want you to donate to Wetzel's, the Homeboy, so we can run it.
I was like, do we have a Homeboy ran Wetzel's here?
We got the management team ready to go. We just need the franchise license.
What partners are in the room that are part of this LA Wetzel?
You got it, Todd? You got it. Perfect.
Done.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the fund's about. Look, for many years, Homeboys has so many generous donors, and Sophie, you're a donor. We thank you for that. And for all those years, I've been doing this 9 years. We're now a $30 million organization. Every nickel we've ever raised goes to what we call the program side of the house. All the services we provide, tattoo removal, anger management, NAAA, mental health services, all that, right? But I've run across a lot of donors who'd say to me, Tom, I'm always going to donate to Homeboy, but if you ever have a business to invest in, I'll help invest in a business. And so finally what we put together was a separate legal structure where we're asking for donations into this Homeboy Venture and Jobs Fund. So we're looking to raise $15 million to create and invest in existing Homeboy type businesses. But the thesis is we think there are a lot of businesses out there that can be acquired. Back to my for-profit days, I made 40 acquisitions in 8 years and sort of know how to acquire businesses. But in the corporate world, you have to have high, mid-teen return on investment. And so we passed up a lot of companies that probably had 8, 9% return on investment. I think there are companies out there that if we acquire them and run them well, they're already making money. We can make 4% return on investment. But the key is that the investor to only accept 4%. But really what you're doing is providing jobs for people who never would have had jobs, and they can make their life dreams come true and change the life of them and their family and have a long-term sustainable business. So it's a $15 million fund. We already raised $10 million of that money, so we're starting to deploy it. Todd's our fund manager, so he's helping us along the way. But what we're trying to do is take those best practices out of the venture capital world and apply it to a world where these folks have never had a chance to work before. And it may sound now as almost old-fashioned words, but if we want the poor in America to move their way up, we have to do something different to give them the right opportunities. And this is the way of going about it.
So I'd love for Brian. I'd love for you to talk about the circular economy, and not necessarily circular economy, but really apparel. And where we are with textiles, because Prana has been on that journey Prana is the journey. And you are so much further but it's that other piece of, because you've been the journey, that is where the shift is. You have the keys to the shift, but what are the things that we need to do to be these collaborative partners for you for the shifts that need to be done?
Wow, that's a big question. Let me take a small.
These are the things I think about.
Let me make a small chunk of this, and it's pertinent because Simon, you obviously did the podcast with Rachel Lincoln from our team about our responsible packaging movement, and I think that's pertinent here because it's everything you're talking about, Simon, of the virtuous cycle or virtuous spiral. Thank you, not just cycle. So we've realized, and anyone who gets a package, no matter where you get it from, especially in the clothing world, it's in a poly bag, a plastic bag, right? And this must have been 7 or 8 years ago. One of our stores sent us a picture after they got a shipment. And it was like the size of like 3 rows of chairs. It just poly bags stuffed into poly bags up to the ceiling, saying, what the hell do you want us to do with all this? And even at that time, we felt we were a responsible brand. Inside those poly bags were organic cotton shirts and dresses and recycled polyester jackets or whatever, but it was a real problem. So we set forth trying to solve it, and little step by little step, we're on a journey. And we started to gain some best practices, because the reason we all put our product in poly bags is we don't want it to get ruined or dirty between the factory and wherever we made it and your front door. And because if you get it dirty, it's ruined, it gets discarded, that's a bigger loss. So we mastered a lot of practices, and we had this really great kind of secret sauce on how to achieve it. That was great. That took annually somewhere between 5 and 10 million plastic bags out of the environment. But that's tiny. That's a drop in the ocean. So we decided to create what we call the responsible packaging movement. And basically what we wanted to do, we invited any company to join us, and we'd share every single secret we know about from where we started to where we got to. And it started slow. We had a few brands at first. We started it in 2019. As of today, We have 105 brands who've joined us. Along in our space, Sephora joined last week, so it's across many industries. But let's just say that's 100 brands, because it's easier for me to do math. If it's 10 million polybags for us, and we're a small size company, just take that by 100, right? Right? $1 billion, right? So we just shared and leveraged 100x something we created. So that, now these are special moments. I don't think we can do this again because they're different challenges, but just taking a simple idea that works for us and offering to share it free of charge, we do the work, we share it out, is one of our proudest successes. And I will say from a media standpoint, it's the single biggest story that our brand has been covered on in the last 2 years in terms of impressions and everything else. So there was a real good payback from a business standpoint, but obviously we did it for the environmental impact.
Lead with we. Time and space. How many? How many brands?
105
When did
and
you
counting.
When did you start this?
A little over a year ago, like right before really the whole pandemic kicked in.
That's the virtuous spiral.
It is. I mean,
What I am just so in awe of listening to this panel is each one of you is representative of this idea that business can be a movement of movements. We've got this empowerment movement for this, underserved communities. We've got health and wellness. So every one of them, homeboys and giving people a second chance at life. We've got the responsible packaging movement. Each one of those is a movement specific and authentic to each brand. But together, that's a whole new repurposing of business at large. And then even within what you shared, it's so amazing, Jen, the microcosm or the ecosystem they're building in and around just what's going on in Wetzel's Pretzels. So it can be an internal collaboration focus, or it could be this collaborative effort across all of these different brands. But in that way, business becomes a movement of movements. And just listen to the scale that is possible and how quickly it's possible, and then listen to how the market forces reward it because you get all that earned media, which you could never afford to pay for in your own right. And we're just scratching the surface of what's possible, and it's only possible because consumers want it, our employees want it, our investors want it. Why? Because we're in trouble. So we are at the beginning of this moment of rebirth for business, and every one of you is a signal to others that it's possible. And if we start sharing more and more of these stories, more young companies will come to the table. They'll steal more market share from the big boys or girls. The big boys or girls will go, oh, that's not good. We better change what we're doing. And overnight, you will see industries transform. And then together, these industries will repurpose business. And suddenly, we will look back at this moment in time, 2019, 2020, and certainly the 2010s, and go, how on earth did we do it any other way? Why were we destroying the life system on which we depend? It's like being in a sci-fi movie and you've got a life support system and you've got that one rogue crew member who destroys the life support system, and everyone goes, what are you doing? We're all going to die. We're all doing that right now. It doesn't make any sense, but the change is happening.
Thank you. Thank you for the light. Thank you for the light. It's possible. And thank you for thank you, Simon, for the virtuous spiral. We need it's so important for us to have the words, the knowledge, the focus on where we should be going. I get to give this away. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Whoa. The guy with the Dodger hat. Who are you? Who are you?
My name is Nick, and I'm the Chief Design Officer of a commerce company. And just here to get some insights into changing our culture and reducing impact on shipping, which I now have a big impact in because I work in.
Well, welcome to the virtuous spiral.
Try to tell my publisher that's a really bad idea.
Sign it later for me, right?
I was like, wait, maybe we take pictures. Thank you for this. Thank you, Simon, for bringing us all together. But lead with we. It is possible. It's all of us. Thank you so much, Conscious Capitalism, for pulling us together after a time that is calling us all. So I just leave you all with What's your role? Constantly. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly shifting. What's your role? How am I stepping up? How am I showing up for me and for we?
Thank you so much, Jordan and Simon and Jen and Laurel and Tom. Sorry, this keeps going out. Really appreciate the conversation. Really appreciate the work that you're doing and the inspiration that you're bringing into the room and to the movement. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. We are at this amazing moment for conscious capitalism. We are co-creating the future of this organization together with the national headquarters. So we're really interested to hear from you and how you might want to be involved in that movement. We have a QR code somewhere here where there's two QR codes for 10% off the book, and the other is to take a little, give us some feedback about, oh, thank you. Okay, good. What events you might want to be part of, and if you would like to be involved at all in the movement going forward. So check those out. QR code, you scan it with your phone on the photo setting kind of thing, and then it opens a link. Don't panic too much. We're going to send you a follow-up email that will also have those links in there if you don't get to it tonight. And I think that was everything I wanted to say. Lisa Schenk also wanted to give a word. So thank you. I'm going to hand it over.
I just surprised Taya with this idea that I have something to say. Thank you to all of you. I'm Lisa Schenk. I am a co-founder and past president of CCLA. And we're so grateful for all of you who showed up today. I know it's been tricky with COVID, and we hope that you felt safe and comfortable while you're here. I would love to have a gift for each one of our panelists, but I figure that just being here is gift enough. So thank you all for being here and showing up, making the drive, and risking life and limb to get here. But I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to a couple of people who are particularly important to this event and to the future and past of the organization. One of them is Taya. Thank you, Taya. Come here. I gotta say just a couple of words. Taya has really, with the help of this board, but almost single-handedly pulled us through COVID. And we would not be here tonight without her. Thank you. I get it. Sorry, guys. You know, we're on a shoestring budget here. But Taya, I'd like to offer you this bottle of wine. I'm going to say thank you to Cornell Winery for this bottle. You're welcome to. Somebody had to do it. The other person I want to thank is Juliet, who has been, some of you, not Juliet, clearly, been our fearless coordinator for over a year, really her first job out of college, which she nailed, and then got a job with a really incredible organization. I feel very grateful that you're doing that. But I wanted to say a special thank you to you for taking off a day on your new job here to help us make sure that we could do it.
Thank you. That's so sweet. That's really nice. Please enjoy yourselves, whatever food and things we still have remaining outside. Emily, you want to say something? Take an extra salad to go. Okay. So yeah, we will at a certain point have to clean up and leave. So, enjoy yourselves. But if we start, just, you're part of the revolution now, so you can help us clean. So how about that? Thanks, everyone.